There is one glaring reality about the Bible that I feel rarely, if ever, gets noticed or discussed. That is angels. Well, to be more specific, angels having wings. Why exactly do angels have wings? Wings are for one purpose, and one purpose only: to fly through air, to generate lift. And if this doesn't seem odd enough or suspect of being fable, God takes a ride on the back of one of these flying creatures. You know, for getting around. You see, back when the Bible was written, people had very little understanding of reality. They believed God sits on a throne and lives up above the clouds. That's where Jesus floated up to. In fact, all of these divine floaters made their journey up into the clouds. As you might recall, Elijah also went up in a whirlwind. So, angels needed wings. But today, with advancements in science, such ideas are absolutely absurd. We now know there is no golden city up there, no throne of God up on top of the dome. Yes, the flat earthers use the Bible for its many erroneous definitions of cosmology. This group claims over 200 verses promote a flat earth. Regardless, millions of people actually believe this golden city will someday float down from out of the clouds and descend onto Jerusalem, because the Bible says so. Perhaps one of the most odd verses in the Bible is where Adam and Eve were kicked out of the garden and angels guarded the entrance with swords. Swords? Adam and Eve had never made or even seen a sword by that time. Not only do angels have wings, but God also armed them with human Bronze Age weaponry. These sword-wielding angels continue to appear throughout the Bible, even keeping these swords stored in a sheath. Are we talking about the same God who would have created a living cell and DNA, making swords? Yes, even Jesus seems to lack any understanding of advanced possibilities, as he claims he will return with a sword as well. Or perhaps a believer might tell you how you really shouldn't take the Bible so literally. That's actually a good idea. Let's definitely not. Because we are talking about a man having Superman-like powers in the locks of his hair, magical healing pools, donkeys talking, a virgin giving birth to a magical God-man who feeds 5,000 people with only 2 fish, turns water into wine, walks on water, and calms storms like some kind of a Marvel superhero. Do believers really believe all this stuff? Or do they disregard what sounds like fairy tales and then pick and choose the ones they wish or need to be true? Because the Bible is filled end to end with magical stories that are outlandish. I don't wish to offend believers, but how exactly am I to understand people believing Moses had a battle of wizardry with Egypt's magicians? Or how about when Joshua stopped the sun in the sky for a whole day? Yup, God would suspend the entire solar system just so Joshua could finish killing off the Canaanites. Or how about the time when Jesus came back to life and dead people began rising out of their graves and walking around in the city? We all know, even Christians know, how these tales do not mirror reality. Not at all. It's rather interesting how the entire noonday sky goes black with a great earthquake during the height of the great Roman Empire, and nobody notices or writes anything down about this mega world-shattering event? In fact, nobody can even remember the day of resurrection. not even the weekend. Actually, not even the year. Within a 5-year margin of error. These stories are screaming out how they never happened. I am aware how many Christians do struggle with this and recognize many Bible stories do look and feel like fairy tales, fable. But most have been conditioned early on in life to normalize these otherwise illogical and outlandish tales. Here is the reality. The Bible was written by Bronze and Iron Age men at a time when it was completely normal to believe a blood sacrifice ritual forgives your sin and appeases God. All early religions practiced this long before Jesus capitalized on the concept. It is nothing new. And nearly all early humans believed holy men float up into the clouds. Even Muhammad made his flight up to the Golden City, up in the clouds. So normal were these common concepts that they were certainly not original to the Bible. Even virgins giving birth predated Jesus. An Iranian prophet named Zoroaster from around 1000 BC is said to have been born of a virgin as well. These ideas are not original to Christianity. They are borrowed. Most of Christianity's theologies were borrowed from other popular theologies at that time. For example, the Christian concept of heaven and hell described in the New Testament do not exist within the Old Testament, and was never taught or believed by any Jews like Moses, King David, or Abraham. Christianity borrowed from, at that time, the more popular Greek concepts of the afterlife. In fact, the entire Testament is penned in Greek. A heaven and a hell. Mount Olympus was up in the clouds, and hell, Hades, was down below. And upon judgment you would go up or down. And of course, this is why Jesus had to descend down into the earth to deal with the devil before floating up into, well, into the clouds. But likewise, even the Old Testament borrows popularized theologies and practices at that time as well. You see, Moses, who it is claimed wrote the first 5 books of the Bible, was a high-ranking Egyptian leader, clearly influenced by Akhenaten, who first proposed a one-God concept, monotheism, right before Moses ran off with it. Perfect timing. In fact, much of the Abrahamic religion was influenced and borrowed from the older religions of Egypt, including temple worship, Holy of Holies, sacrifices, Ark of the Covenant. It can go on and on. Of course, the Jews lost their ark in battle, but you can go see a spectacular Egyptian ark right now. It's in a museum. Apparently, the all-wise and powerful Creator is also a copycat. What puzzles me is this. If God provided us with a book to save our souls from hell, and the requirement being that we have to believe it, why wouldn't God, in all His great wisdom, make it more believable? Or even original? Break the mold. Why borrow practices and theologies, or endorse and promote fable? And shouldn't there at least exist some realistic evidence? Well, it would appear as though this God is more than happy to see most of us burn in hell. But of course, even the gruesome, confusing, and illogical concepts of hell, well, you guessed it, they're also in this book, right next to the verses of angels packing around swords. If God, in His infinite wisdom, really does care and desires to save us all, He could have provided knowledge that only a god could have known. Correctly describing cosmology would be a great start, because people didn't have telescopes back then, and quite frankly, performing real science warranted being tortured to death. Just ask Galileo. So God really missed a golden opportunity to get something right. You know, evidence, proof, yeah, that kind of stuff. But perhaps we should consider that if God did offer any kind of proof, you know, realistic or tangible proof, well, then we would all believe by now. That's not good. Then nobody would go to hell. So an all-wise and all-powerful God instead leaves us with no tangible evidence for his identity and continues on to master the art of hide and seek, a game this God is really good at. Therefore, a relationship with Jesus will characteristically mirror that of an imaginary one in every conceivable way. And rather than being realistic, the Bible firmly promotes magicians and psychics as being reality. It even attempts to produce its own psychic predictions. We call these prophecies. Sadly, every single promise and prediction found in the Bible has failed. It's a train wreck. But of course, they continue on being revised and reinterpreted by later generations. You know, keep the dream alive. Or they simply remain unfulfilled, and people are waiting and waiting and waiting. But who am I really kidding? None of this really matters at the end of the day, because if you are a Christian, you probably feel as though you have had a real emotional and personal experience with Jesus. Well, I'm sorry to sound judgmental or poke at these sentimental and emotional issues, but I cannot understand how any believer is able to convince themselves that their personal experience with Jesus is anything more than imagination or endorphins sending chills down your spine. Much like when you hear a great song or when a Buddhist monk meditates. And I suspect some Christians are being a bit dishonest with themselves about these divine personal experiences. Because, characteristically speaking, there is nothing divine happening. Nobody is on the other end of the line. I do believe if religious folks were being completely honest, they would admit this reality. However, I am not trying to convince anyone there is no God. Perhaps there is, and or could be. But in order to believe in a religion such as Christianity or even Islam, it typically requires conditioning at a very young age. We do tend to believe what our parents tell us is true. But the real truth of the matter is, you can't just take this religion into a foreign country and start converting everyone. They do try, and it's not that easy, because it is a hard sell. It is very difficult to become a believer if you weren't born into it, precisely because there is no evidence for it being even remotely reality, and is clearly filled with unbelievable tall tales. If it wasn't, and if there was any kind of good evidence, all of us, the whole world, would be Christian by now. If prayer worked, even slightly, we would all be Christian by now. Stay strong and wise, my friends. Hello, friends. Please help me grow this page by becoming a subscriber and clicking the support button right down below if you're watching on Facebook. Or go to patreon.com/Stairway to Reason and sign up, become a member for as little as $1 a month. And if you don't like subscribing and signing up for things, I have a PayPal where you can make reoccurring monthly donations for as little as $1. It's safe, fast, and super easy. Just ask for my PayPal link in the comments below. Thank you so much, my friends, and stay strong and wise.
I don't believe in masquerades. I don't believe that you're okay.